Much to talk about. Let's get to our panel. Raymond Vickery served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce during the Clinton administration. He focuses on India as a senior advisor to the Albright Stonebridge Group and serves as a global fellow in the Asia program at the Wilson International Center for Scholars. Haiyan Wang is the managing partner for the China-India Institute and co-author of Getting China and India Right. And Sadanand Dhume focuses on South Asia as a senior fellow with the American Enterprise Institute. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Sadanand, let me start with you. As we mentioned in the introduction, three big issues here: immigration, trade, and defense. We don't know too many details right now. This meeting only took place a few hours ago. But what would it take for this meeting to be considered a success?
I think the meeting would be considered a success because the expectations were quite low. The fact that there were no minefields, no one tripped on a mine, the fact that Trump pretty much stayed on script and didn't berate India like he had a few weeks ago, the fact that both of the leaders were effusive in praising each other. I see this sort of as a kind of, a visit that was first and foremost about ensuring that a relationship that has seen remarkable progress over the last couple of decades remained on the rails. And the fact that it has clearly remained on the rails with some incremental gains here and there is in itself enough for me to call it a success.
Haiyan, how would China be looking at this meeting?
China will be observing and tracking the meetings very closely. I think that overall we shouldn't see the relationship between U.S. and India versus U.S. and China as some sort of a zero-sum relationships. I think that as President Xi and President Trump met in April and both defined the relationship to be one of the most important, major power relationships. And I think that whether it's trade, whether it's investment, whether it's cooperations in resolving major global issues such as the North Korea denuclearization, U.S. and China will have to cooperate and collaborate very closely. And then, if we look in the long-term horizon, U.S., China, or China and the U.S. and India are bound to be the three largest economies in the world. Perhaps in 10 years' time, India will be the third largest economy, and China sooner or later taking over as the largest economy. So we expect the triangular relationships on all fronts will be extremely important, and there's no reason for China to be too concerned over some of development, even in the military cooperation between U.S. and India. At this stage, I think that China is not overly concerned. I hope so.
That's right. As our reporter pointed out, India will be buying weapons from the United States. Raymond, as our reporter also told us, a big focus of this meeting was on trade. She talked about the deficit. But when we look at these two countries, what would they want from each other?
Well, I think that what they want to do is really square the circle between America first and Make in India. There is a tension there. And of course, President Trump's portfolio is jobs, jobs, jobs. And that really is reflected by what Prime Minister Modi wants as well. So the question is, how do you do that? And just as strategic matters should not be a zero-sum game, hopefully the economic relationship won't be a zero-sum game. President Trump did talk about the LNG being sold from the United States to India. He said he wanted to get the price up. That's a typical Trump approach. And on the matter of market access, he did ping that a little bit too, and the trade deficit. But these are two economies which should be, along with China, engines of growth in the world, and so they were trying to bring that together.
Now, on that point of market access, there have been U.S. lawmakers who have complained about that. Do you think that the Americans received any assurances from the Indians?
Well, I think what they received was assurances of continuity. You know, there are about 50 working groups on various matters, including the economic matters. And what they needed was some assurance that in spite of the tweets, in spite of what's been said about the climate change and billions of dollars, that really it had not written off the rails. And so I think both sides got that assurance, but they didn't get any assurance about the next step in actually bringing down barriers, attacking trade deficit. Nor on the other side did India get what it wanted, I think, on H-1B visas and continued access on services.
Sadanand, that point that Raymond made, H-1B visas, these are visas that enable people to come to the United States, information technology professionals coming here. 70% of those visas actually go to Indian nationals. Trump says these workers who are coming here to the United States are taking away American jobs. What does Prime Minister Modi do about that?
It's important, first of all, to see that nothing has changed on the H-1B question. There has been absolutely no material change. The second thing is that this is something, when it does come about, is going to be driven by Congress. So this has certainly been an issue that much of the media has sort of played up, but I don't see it at this stage as being particularly important to the US-India relationship, partly because things haven't changed, and partly because I think there's a growing realization in India that its IT companies are going to have to adapt and evolve and face these new realities, and the new reality includes tighter immigration restrictions in the US.
Right, you know, there are some very big Indian corporations, like the outsourcing company Wipro, which says that Trump is a risk to their business.
Absolutely. But the larger question is, are the problems of Wipro and Infosys and TCS in adapting to these changes? They've seen this coming down the pike for a long time. I don't think that this is something that is going to hold the larger relationship hostage even remotely.
Right, this visa issue, Haiyan, is also important to China. So will China be watching this very closely?
I don't think this is a big issue, certainly not for China, and even for India. I think that Indian companies like Infosys will have to meet with the challenges, for example, the automation, the artificial intelligence. At some point, India's outsourcing IT industry sector will have to adapt. Artificial intelligence will replace a lot of the outsourced IT works to India anyhow. And Indian companies becoming global companies servicing US customers, and they will do a better services having centers here, as they move up the value chain. And actually Infosys is planning to build several centers, hiring some 10,000 IT workers in the US. In the grand scheme of things, this H-1 visa, this replacing American skilled workers is not a big issue.
Raymond, let's talk about climate change. Of course, the United States has pulled out of the Paris Accord. The one view is that this would give China and India an opportunity to take the lead on climate change. But, you know, we're also hearing that there's ample opportunity for India and the United States to cooperate here, because India has already announced that it wants to move, for instance, to electric cars. It's going to need that technology from the United States, isn't it?
Yes, I think it's like everything else. It presents both a challenge and an opportunity. There's no question that there's a challenge. When you have a president of the United States saying things which are manifestly not true in terms of the obligations of India and the United States, China and the United States, and how it's one-sided, and so you had to come out. That's just, there's no factual basis for that. The reality is that these are nationally determined, voluntary commitments that have been made. Now, I think on the opportunity side, it does open up a lot. LNG, I mentioned, liquefied natural gas. India needs that as a backup to solar. It needs technology. I think that there are good brains in India which can work on these kinds of energy problems as well. So I think that you have to look at it holistically and say that, yeah, there are as many opportunities as there are challenges about it, but it certainly was not helpful to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. It does present an opportunity for India and China to take over a leadership position that the United States is relinquishing here.
Sadanand, do you think the issue came up in their talks?
I don't think it would have been very high up. I think that the Indian side had decided that they're going to concentrate on areas where cooperation is possible.
Right.
And I think people basically just shrugged off President Trump's rather bizarre statements from a few weeks ago.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break right now. More of our conversation when we return. Stay with us. You're watching The Heat.